Welcome back to my fourth and final installment of my How to Fix Offseason Guide series. We are just over 48 hours away as of the recording this video from free agency starting, so there's going to be a lot to uncover. And I just want to get this off the bat before I go into the video. For free agency, I'm going to, unless like a major trade happens, like Ben Simmons, Damian Lillard, Bradley Beal, whatever, I'm just going to wait until free agency's over and kind of do a whole recap video similar to what I did for the trade deadline. So that's what I'll do. And for this episode, I'm doing the Miami Heat, the 2020 Eastern Conference champions who took the LA Lakers to 6 games in the NBA Finals, but this year experienced a down year. I believe they had the most players out due to COVID. I could be wrong. They dealt with injuries to the entire lineup. Tyler Hero, a bunch of other players really struggled. They ended up finishing with the sixth seed at a 40-32 record, but got swept by the eventual champs in the Milwaukee Bucks in the first round. So I wanted to go with this team, obviously, because they just made the Eastern Conference Finals, or made the NBA Finals just over a year ago, and also compared to some of the other teams I wanted to do, but I didn't get a chance to, like Dallas or Boston or New Orleans. Miami really hasn't made a whole lot of moves like this offseason, so it's like they're basically the same team as they were the same team as they were from the 2021 season, and I assume things are going to be a lot different in this offseason period because they have to make a choice one way or the other, and knowing Pat Riley, he's probably going to go towards the championship side. So their current salary is $98 million. Just today, they picked up Goran Dragic's team option, but declined Andre Iguodala's team option. For the Goran Dragic part, I assume they're either two options are going to happen. Either A, they just keep him and run it back, or they're going to use his salary in a potential trade or sign and trade, which I'll go into in just a bit, but obviously that's what they're working at. In terms of their current free agents, they have a lot. Victor Oladipo, who they got from Houston at the deadline. Like I said before, Andre Iguodala declined his $15 million team. They declined his $15 million team option. Trevor Ariza, Nemanja Bay Alicia, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, Udonis Haslem, who I assume is going to retire. I think he did retire. I'm not 100% sure. Dwayne Denman, Max Struss, and Gabe Vincent. So, breaking down their free agents, they have the bird rights to Oladipo, Bay Alicia, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, and Udonis Haslem. So, they can offer those guys any sort of contract they want and not have to worry about the salary cap. In terms of early bird rights, they have Trevor Ariza and Andre Iguodala. They don't have bird rights to Dwayne Denman, and Max Struss and Gabe Vincent were under two-way contracts. So, in terms of their own team, I would say this. You have to keep Duncan Robinson. I feel like that's plan A unless you have a bigger plan in free agency. I mean, the sharpshooting he brings to you, his ability to shoot off the dribble, his ability to shoot from behind the arc, he's been one of the best shooters in the NBA the past couple of seasons. He is going to get a boatload of money. I've been hearing somewhere in the ballpark of $15 to $20 million, which would put the Heat over the salary cap, obviously, but I feel like he's a big priority. Kendrick Nunn, I think they would like to keep him, but seeing the fact that he's been kind of in and out of the rotation for the past 2 seasons, I wouldn't be shocked if they do let him walk, but I kind of expect them to bring them back. And I'll talk about a Kendrick Nunn sign and trade later in this video. Victor Oladipo is weird. I feel like if he was healthy, he would have been a very solid third star next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. But, the same questions you were asking when you're trading for him are coming up now. He obviously dealt with his foot injury, I believe it was. Not 100% sure, but he was hurt for really the most of his Heat tenure. I don't think he really played that many games. He missed the playoffs for them. And so, depending on what he wants, I'm not entirely sure if you want to bring him back or opt for another star who's available on the open market. Nemanja Bay Alicia, he's another guy I assume you have to bring back. He's a great three-point shooter off the bench. He kind of, especially with the loss of Kelly Olynyk from the Victor Oladipo trade, having a backup big who can spread the floor will be huge, especially with a team that's centered on Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, 2 guys who aren't great shooters. And then Udonis Haslem, like I said, if he doesn't retire, I assume they could just bring him back on a veteran minimum, and that's what I expect them to do, so I'm not worried about him. Trevor Ariza and Andre Iguodala, money won't be an issue for either of them because I believe they were coming off big contracts. I know Iguodala declined the $15 million player option or team option, so I assume they'll be able to pay him. I don't know if they'll re-sign Andre Iguodala. I mean, he's a good locker room presence, but especially this season, it looked like you were kind of starting to see the end of Andre Iguodala, and especially if you want to go with either younger or other alternatives at the small forward position, I wouldn't be surprised if they go that way. Same with Trevor Ariza. I feel like he's also suffering just from time itself. I think he's entering his age 38 season, so you might want to explore other avenues that could also be cheaper. Dwayne Denman, no bird rights. Now, he's probably a key free agent you'd also want to keep, because while you do have Precious Achiuwa and Casey Okpala, they're both very young guys. I think Okpala is a third-year guy. He's going to be going in his third year, and Precious Achiuwa will be going in his second year. And, they did show some flashes, and they actually been playing pretty solid in the Olympics, but, they are just second and third-year guys. You don't know how much you can trust them playing behind Bam Adebayo, and Dwayne Denman's the perfect center to have as a backup. I mean, I've been talking about him for other teams to get as a backup center, a guy who can rim protect, shoot at a decent enough level. He probably won't cost you a whole lot. I mean, you probably will be able to get him for the mid-level, which they have the non-taxpayer mid-level, so around $9.5 million is his value. It's just a matter of him wanting to stay in Miami or not. And then Max Struss and Gabe Vincent. I'll be honest, I don't know a whole lot about what they want to do with Max Struss, but Gabe Vincent, I assume they want to keep back either as another two-way deal or just sign him straight up. So I don't know in what order they're going to be attacking these free agents. They probably want to wait until they see what happens in the open market before they can get the guys back they have on bird rights. But now, going towards free agents, open free agents that aren't currently on their team. I mean, the biggest need for this Miami Heat team, and if you saw them play, especially in the playoffs, they need shot creation and playmaking next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. Their offense was one of the worst. It was below average this season, despite having one of the best defenses in the league. And if Jimmy Butler wasn't hitting his shots, you really couldn't rely on any other guys, because Tyler Hero, who was supposed to be kind of that guy, really didn't perform. So the point guard market is the most interesting market, because obviously that's a big need for them, especially with Goran Dragic, his age getting up there, and obviously their needs on the court. Kyle Lowry's been the big target. I mean, he's the front runner. He's been the Heat are one of the front runners to land Kyle Lowry, and I mean, the fit makes perfect sense. Kyle Lowry, I've talked about him in my other videos. This guy can play with the ball, without the ball. Great passer, great defender, great three-point shooter. Great locker room guy. He's won championships. He brings the sort of effort that will kind of fit along with the rest of the team and whatever the Miami Heat culture. So obviously, he would be a huge fit. But if you can land him, there's obviously Mike Conley, who's kind of similar in vein, just not as good as Kyle Lowry. Lonzo Ball, who's also similar, but he's younger. And then Spencer Dinwiddie, who's just kind of a shot creator. Now, for those four guys, you would have to do a sign and trade that would a sign trade that would involve Goran Dragic to make the money work. And then, like I said before, sign trades are kind of weird. Maybe you can get away with just Goran Dragic, but you might have to include another young piece to entice one of these teams to take them on. If you somehow swing and miss on all four of those guys, which I believe is kind of unrealistic, but regardless, Patty Mills, he's a great three-point shooter to have. Reggie Jackson, he was a great shot creator in the playoffs. He might make a lot of money from a bad team, but if he's willing to come to a team on a cheap deal to win a championship, Miami would be a great fit. Austin Rivers, you can probably get him, if not for the minimum, the mid-level. Guy's a shot creator off the bench for your team, won't wow you, but he's not horrible either. And in campaign, we saw what he just did for the Suns in these playoff runs. I know he had a disappointing finals run, but he still brought value to that Phoenix Suns bench unit, and I think he can do something similar for the Miami Heat. Now, going to shooting guard, now this is, if they don't want to re-sign Victor Oladipo, or if they just don't re-sign him, these are some guys that you can bring in. DeMar DeRozan, I think he's a better player than Victor Oladipo, and he's also good as a shot creator and secondary playmaker. I just don't like the fit next to Butler and Bam. If you want to go with a guy who's more of just a pure shot creator but not as good of a playmaker, Tim Hardaway Jr. solid. Evan Fournier, Norman Powell, Lou Will, Alec Burks. At least one of those guys you'll be able to get for the mid-level if you don't want to re-sign Victor Oladipo, which I feel like they probably will, especially if they swing and miss on one of the 4 point guards I mentioned. Now, if you want to look towards guys who are just like more 3-and-D guys or just pure shooters, you have Danny Green. I assume he'll re-sign, but his name's out there. J.J. Redick, he obviously has a good relationship with Jimmy Butler, playing formerly on the Philadelphia 76ers, so he might want to come in on a vet minimum deal, provide you some shooting. He can knock down some shots, not a great defender, but still. There's Tony Snell, Wesley Matthews, Wayne Ellington, Etuan Moore, and Kent Bazemore. if you want to bring in more shooting, I'm sure one of these guys would like to come in on a veteran minimum deal, especially if they want to win a championship. Going to small forward, obviously Kawhi Leonard's a free agent. I don't see him leaving, but obviously the fit next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo would be amazing. And him on the Heat would instantly put him, if not, they would probably put him as the second best team in the East going into the season, but I assume he's going to re-sign. Kelly Oubre, I mean, I think I like the fit with him in Miami. I just think he's going to make too much money. And a cheaper option who can provide some shot creation off the bench is Will Barton. I don't think he's going to re-sign with Denver, but, just throw the name out there. And if you want to go with some more shooting options, there's Doug McDermott, Reggie Bullock, Torrey Craig, and Ben McLemore. Now, sliding out of the power forward position, I don't think this is a huge need for them, especially they got a lot of big guys, but if you want to provide just like 3-and-D guys, maybe like a small ball 5, James Johnson, obviously he was with the Heat for a few years, or he was with the Heat a couple of years ago. Trey Lyles. This is if you lose Nemanja Bay Alicia, I think he would be a solid replacement. Same with Lauri Markkanen, and then Markieff Morris can provide a 3-and-D role off the bench. Now, I don't think now I'm going to go on to center. I don't think it's a pressing need, especially if you re-sign Dwayne Denman, because you have Adebayo, Dedmon, Precious Achiuwa, Casey Okpala. Even if one of them gets traded, that's still a good front court unit, and you can always just get someone in the buyout market. But if you don't re-sign Dwayne Dedmon, I think someone like Gorgie Dang and Daniel Tice can fill in his role pretty nicely. Andre Drummond has been linked with the Heat, but I don't like the fit, especially if you're going to slot him in the starting lineup. On the bench, things might be a bit different, but I'm just not a huge Andre Drummond guy. I feel like he's the antithesis of what a modern NBA center should be, and for what he believes, how much he should be making, contenders won't be giving him that money. Now those are more like kind of traditional 5s. If you want to go like small ball 5s, if you don't re-sign Dwayne Denman, obviously, you got Bobby Portis, who the Bucks will try to re-sign, but they don't have their bird rights, so they can only give him the mid-level or even the taxpayer mid-level. So if he wants to leave, get a bit more money, I mean, Milwaukee would be a solid fit. Kelly Olynyk, you had him previously, and I don't know how that relationship is currently, but bringing Kelly Olynyk back wouldn't be a bad option. I've heard reports that the Rockets would like to re-sign him, and given how he performed, he probably will be out of the price range, but that's still an option. Paul Millsap, I think he'd be a slight upgrade from Dwayne Dedmon. His age is obviously a concern. I think he's going to be 37 going into next season, but I like him as a veteran presence on this team, and he provides a similar role to Dwayne Dedmon and does it better. PJ Tucker's in the same vein as Bobby Portis, and they also don't have his bird rights, so maybe you can poach one of those two guys away from one of your rivals and add him onto your team. JaMychal Green's kind of similar to all these guys. And then Patrick Patterson. Clippers do have his early bird rights, but I'm not entirely sure if they're going to re-sign him. And Jeff Green's the final option, and the Nets don't have his bird rights. If you don't want to go with Dwayne Denman and you can nab one of these guys, especially from your rivals like the Bucks or Nets, I think that'd be huge for the Miami Heat, but those are just some options out there. So now moving on to trades. Like I've done before with the trades, I'll talk about packages I've heard but just simply don't make sense. The first one is a Ben Simmons package. First of all, the fit with Ben Simmons on the team doesn't make sense because obviously we know of his shooting woes, and if you're putting him next to Jimmy Butler, who's already a below average 3-point shooter, and Bam Adebayo, who's also very unwilling to shoot, fit obviously is not going to make sense. Also, there might be some potential locker room problems because when Jimmy Butler left, like reports are saying that one of the reasons why he left was because of Ben Simmons. I'm not entirely sure of how accurate those reports are, but that is a possibility, and I'm sure Jimmy Butler has at least some say in who the Miami Heat would want to bring in. Also, there's the Bradley Beal and Damian Lillard trades. I just don't think Miami has enough. They can't offer a first-round pick until 2025, and they can't offer a second until 2028, so you don't have the draft capital to make it work. And unless you want to give up 4 of Hero, Achiuwa, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, or Casey Okpala, I just don't see it happening. I mean, you could give them up, but how willing is the Miami Heat really how willing are the Heat in giving up those players when they've had a hesitancy in the past for even better players such as James Harden? And then I've seen some reports with Harrison Barnes. I like Harrison Barnes as a fit, but for Miami needs a third star, and I just don't think Harrison Barnes provides that. Now, if you can swing a guy like Kyle Lowry and Harrison Barnes, then yeah, I think it wouldn't be a bad fit, especially if you're only giving up one of your younger guys or even Goran Dragic. So those are the trades I just don't really see happening, and I don't think they're not very realistic in my mind. I talked about this when I was mentioning Kendrick Nunn. I don't know how likely it is or if the Heat would be willing to do it, but I saw a Kendrick Nunn Lauri Markkanen sign trade. I think it's interesting for both teams because obviously the Bulls have had their problems at the guard position. Kobe White hasn't really been playing up to potential, and Zach LaVine's really the only shot creating guard on that team. You know, you take a flyer on Kendrick Nunn, who was first team all rookie just a couple of years ago, and obviously they've had their problems with Lauri Markkanen, especially with Thaddeus Young and Nikola Vucevic now on the roster, and Miami Heat could use the 3-point shooting. So the fit makes sense, but I'm not entirely sure how likely either team would do it. But it's an option out there, and I don't think it would be a bad option. So now going to other trades that are interesting / I like the fit for this team. Campbell Walker, obviously he just got traded from Boston to Oklahoma City. Now the trade package is Campbell Walker and Kenrich Williams for Goran Dragic, Casey Okpala, and a 2025 first. If I don't know if I'd give up Tyler Hero in a Campbell Walker trade. Obviously Campbell Walker would be a good third star, but you know his woes and the problems, his woes in the playoffs this season, the fact that he's getting on the worst side of 30, you don't know how much longer you're going to get good play with him. Even if you think Tyler Hero is overrated, I just think there are better options out there that if you're willing to give up Tyler Hero, you should just pursue them instead. I mean, if you can only give up Casey Okpala, Dragic to make the money work in a 2025 first, I don't see this as like a bad plan B, but I think it's an interesting fit. I'm not entirely sure how likely the Thunder would take it, though, but Sam Presti always loves his pick, so you really don't know. Next, there's Brandon Ingram. Obviously, there were reports saying that Brandon Ingram might want out. The trade I've seen was Goran Dragic, who just picked up his team option to make the money work. Precious Achiuwa or Casey Okpala, I assume one of them would have to go, not both of them. A Tyler Hero, a 2025 first, and a 2027 first. You know, obviously Goran Dragic is a veteran presence. He brings some shot creation, some spacing that the Pelicans would truly need with Zion on their team, and especially if Lonzo Ball leaves, there's that void at the point guard position. Precious Achiuwa and Casey Okpala are nice project big man guys who can, you know, work under a veteran like Jonas Valanciunas, and then when eventually he decides to hang it up or he starts showing signs of maybe breaking down, there's someone that you can maybe propel up to play in their place. And then we know if Tyler Hero and the potential he brings as a shot creator, you can plug him in, someone who has the ability to shoot from behind the arc, but he hasn't always put it together. I don't think he'd be bad for that bench option as a shot creator off the bench. And then obviously those are the 2 first-round picks. And if the Heat do go through trying to win now, by the year 2025 or 2027, they can be potentially solid enough picks. I don't know how likely the Pelicans are to do it, but I think Brandon Ingram would be a good third star next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and especially since his value is a bit lower, that now that there are reports saying he might want to ask out, and especially his disappointing 2021 season, I could realistically seeing it happening. Next is Colin Sexton. Obviously, we've heard the reports of him wanting to go out, and I think his trade value is so low that a team like the Miami Heat could potentially get a nab at him. The trades I've seen were Tyler Hero, Precious Achiuwa, and a 2025 first. I think you're swapping out the potential shot creating in Tyler Hero for someone more proven in Colin Sexton. Obviously, the floor spacing isn't where you want to be with a Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo unit, but if you can surround them with enough shooters, stagger the minutes more of Jimmy Butler and Colin Sexton, I think it could work. And then even if you give up Precious Achiuwa, you still have Casey Okpala in your lineup and whatever center you get in this free agency process. Now, the last trade is a guy I've talked a lot about in these videos, which is Malcolm Brogdon. Now, this trade is Malcolm Brogdon and TJ Warren for Tyler Hero, Goran Dragic, and Casey Okpala. I can't talk enough about these guys. I think Malcolm Brogdon is like the perfect point guard. He's the perfect complementary piece. He played with the ball in his hands, without the ball in his hands. He's an elite three-point shooter. Elite passer, low turnover guy. I can't sing enough about his praises. I'm a huge Malcolm Brogdon guy, one of the most underrated players in the league. TJ Warren, obviously, he had that foot injury back in January, but if he comes back close to his ability, he can be a great shot creator off the bench, which this Miami Heat team could desperately use. And in what the Pacers are getting back, Tyler Hero is obviously a guy you can take a low risk buy on. If he pans out well for you, that's great. If not, I don't know. I don't see Malcolm Brogdon or TJ Warren in the Pacers' future. Goran Dragic is a guy I assume you could probably just bump up his value a bit, flip him to a contending team at the deadline for a pick, and Casey Okpala is another guy who you can use as a big man, especially with the whole Domantas Sabonis, Miles Turner rumors. He can come in if they opt to trade one of those guys. For the Miami Heat, what is best, worst, realistic case scenario? Well, the worst case scenario is they don't get another third star. They essentially run it back with their three best players being Jimmy Butler, Goran Dragic, and Bam Adebayo. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, that team made the finals just a couple of years ago, or just over a year ago. And while, yes, you are right, they did make the finals, the circumstances have been a lot different. I mean, the East as a whole got better. The Bucks just won a championship and added Drew Holiday. The Nets are healthy now, and they just added James Harden. Boston's making moves. The Sixers are probably going to make some moves. The Atlanta Hawks just made an Eastern Conference Finals. So, where the Heat stand right now, unless they get things to bounce their way, they're probably a second-round exit. If they get lucky, maybe an Eastern Conference Finals run, but I just really don't see that happening. So, worst-case scenario is you don't get that third star to pair next to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. So now, what's realistic? Now, from all the reports I'm saying, it seems like Kyle Lowry to the Heat is a pretty realistic destination, and I wouldn't be shocked myself. And I know he has a good relationship with Jimmy Butler. And it's weird, because I said in my Sixers video that I think it's realistic that Kyle Lowry can come to the Sixers. And now, obviously, if it's realistic for one team to get him and the other team to get him, it just doesn't make sense because there's only one Kyle Lowry. But I think Kyle Lowry coming to the team is not out of the realm of possibility. If they can't get Kyle Lowry, a guy like Colin Sexton also makes perfect sense, especially how low his trade value, the market for Colin Sexton is right now. So I assume one of those two guys is going to be on the Miami Heat next season, along with Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and even potentially Victor Oladipo. I would assume they would also try to retain, maybe all their important pieces. Like, I don't know if Kendrick Nunn's going to be in that future, but I'd assume you would want to retain Bay Alicia, Duncan Robinson, Dwayne Denman. The other guys you can kind of just fill and replace. And so, if you get a guy like Kyle Lowry, Colin Sexton, you retain Oladipo, Duncan Robinson, Dwayne Denman. Maybe you add like a shooter off the bench, like a Wayne Ellington who might want to come back, or maybe you can even poach a small ball five from a team. I think that's pretty realistic. Now, what's the best case scenario for this Heat team? I mean, I'd say best case scenario is that you walk away with Damian Lillard or Bradley Beal, because I think they're just the best players on the market right now. You retain all those players, like I said, and then you poach one of the small ball fives from the Brooklyn Nets or the Milwaukee Bucks. So let's take the realistic case scenario, because I always like doing that for these videos, because it's kind of in the middle. A lot of times you're not going to get always the best case scenario, especially when it's dictated by sign and trades or regular trades in general. But realistic case scenario, what is this Miami Heat team looking like? Okay, so you have Colin Sexton or Kyle Lowry at the 1. I'm not 100% sure which one's more realistic. I think either one of them will be in a Miami Heat uniform by season start. That's just my opinion. You have Colin Sexton and Kyle Lowry at the 1, Victor Oladipo at the 2, Jimmy Butler at the 3. You bring in a guy, either a shooter, or you bring back Trevor Ariza, or you get like one of these like kind of tweeners, like a Markieff Morris, a James Johnson, a Torrey Craig, maybe not Tony Snell, because I don't think he's starter material, but you get one of those like tweener 3 and 4s, like a Markieff Morris or a James Johnson, and then you get Bam Adebayo at the 5 with a bench unit of Kendrick Nunn, Tyler Hero, bring in a sharpshooter like a Wayne Ellington, maybe like a J.J. Redick, a Reggie Bullock, like a sharpshooter like that who can just be a pure shooter off the bench. And then you have Dwayne Denman, Casey Okpala, and Precious Achiuwa. In terms of a 3-star team, it's not a bad lineup. Obviously, there's some concerns of depth, especially if you can't retain a guy like Kendrick Nunn or you lose someone like Tyler Hero. The shot creation ability when it comes to the bench is going to be very thin. But still, in terms of, 3-star lineups, this is not a bad team. I don't know where. I don't think it's better than the Brooklyn Nets, because obviously that's very hard to match. And then when you look between the Milwaukee Bucks and them, we've seen the Milwaukee Bucks best the Miami Heat, but we've also seen the Heat best the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's kind of like who just plays better in that scenario, really. If you can get Kyle Lowry or Colin Sexton, and you retain most of your current free agents like Duncan Robinson, Dwayne Denman, Kendrick Nunn, Victor Oladipo, that propels you into the top echelon of the NBA. I mean, you are going to at least make a second round appearance, and then if things swing your way, you don't have to play the Bucks or the Nets until the second round. You might get an Eastern Conference Finals appearance out of you, and obviously the Heat are trying for a championship, but I think that's very good, especially given where this current roster is right now. Okay, so that'll do it for this video. This is the last episode of my How to Fix series. We're still going to be making some content. We're going to do a off-season recap once everything kind of settles down and free agency is all figured out. But if you enjoyed this episode and you enjoyed this series, click the like button, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.